Hi everyone, welcome to the FYB Rugby Round Table. My name's Sean Phelan. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you to Steve Grainger, the RFU's Development Director, for joining us for our second Q&A. We did this about 8 or 9 weeks ago now. We had lots of great feedback and lots of great questions. So get your questions into the comments and get your questions into we're on tonight, so please come in and get on board and ask questions, because how many times do you actually get to ask the some of the bosses at the RFU. On, and we'll go straight into it. Steve there?
Yeah, I'm here, Sean. I can hear you fine. Already? You keep freezing. Yeah, sorry, I'm good, Sean. I can see you fine, but you keep dropping out.
Okay, we'll see if this works. So Adam Gillings on Twitter asks we might as well go straight into the deep end. How likely will rugby return before Christmas?
God, if I had £1 for every time I'd been asked that question in the last few weeks, I tell you. I mean, I think our position, well, I hope our position's known now, but let me recap anyway. I mean, we've been pretty clear. We've been in positive discussions with the Department for Culture, Media and Sport, DCMS, about a return to full contact rugby. As you probably know now, every time you submit something, it has to go into DCMS, Public Health England have to look at it. It then goes into the Cabinet Office, it then goes into number 10, and we're somewhere in that system. And we have been now for a couple of weeks. So we're talking to them every day. I'm sure we all understand the sort of situation that we're in, and the probably the bigger challenges there, but it's still our absolute ambition to get something more than 10-a-side non-contact rugby being played as soon as possible. I mean, I would hope it'll be well before Christmas.
Oh, let's hope so. Let's absolutely hope so. A lot of people need it. A lot of people want it. So let's touch wood. But I guess with everything that's going on, it's such a hard question to answer, isn't it?
This is a government decision, and who'd want to be in government at the moment? I guess with all the different priorities and different things that they've got to deal with. I mean, where we are trying to get to is there's a whole host of other team sports playing either in an adapted format or a full format. Some of the indoor sports are being challenged at the moment as well because they're not being able to play. But we know that it's absolutely in the interest of all of our clubs and all of our players that we get back to rugby as soon as possible. Full contact would be the absolute aspiration. If we have to take adaptations, I guess we have to take adaptations. It's probably better than non-contact.
Has there been any thought about going back a step or two?
No, I mean that we've not hit that at all. Even in the tier 3 areas, there doesn't seem to be any compelling evidence that there are, the infection risk on the pitch is perhaps as big as anybody even anticipated in the early days. I think the biggest concern for everyone is changing rooms, clubhouses, travel to and from matches, the close proximity, indoor stuff. So touch wood at the moment, outdoor team sports that have been approved through the framework. So for us, the 10-on-10 non-contact variant, there's no reason why that can't continue everywhere at the moment.
Excellent. That's great to hear. Really is great to hear. Okay, so we've had another question from Adam Gillings again. And this is one that's actually been asked a couple of times already. The new RFU structure, could you explain a little bit more about that and what it's going to look like soon as, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, the structure's out there now. We've communicated it out to clubs and to constituent bodies in our community game update. That those sort of back copies are available on our website. But Sean, I can ping the structure through to you tomorrow, and you can happily circulate it to people that are on this this chat. As I think we said last time on the when we came on. We've unfortunately had to cut our staff, as I think most people are aware. We're back operational from the 1st of November, although we're very conscious that a lot of those staff have been on furlough for 6 months plus now, so they're going to take a little bit of time to just get onboarded again. We've got less people on the ground, but we think we've got them in pretty focused roles. Three major priorities for us. One, around supporting our clubs and ultimately supporting those clubs to support themselves and to be sustainable. Secondly, around coaching and refereeing, making sure that we've got quality of coaches and referees out there, increasingly able to adapt to what's clearly a very different environment. And then thirdly, a real focus on player experience. So perhaps the traditional side of the game in terms of competitions and leagues and cups and things like that. But secondly, how we retain more players and how we grow the overall player base.
So
it's probably easier to look at the structure.
Okay, yeah, we'll put the structure. We'll put it in the show notes and everything like that so people can see. Okay, we've got a couple more coming there then. So the structure is in place and it's ready to start on the 1st of November.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Cool. From Natalie Eccles, do you think there'll be long-term effects on rule changes following COVID? We've seen in the Premier 15s that they're playing an adapted game. Is that what we're sort of heading towards?
No, I mean, I don't think so. I don't think there's any intention to do that. I think the law changes that have come about are literally to enable us to get the game played.
Okay.
And I think there's different views out there, aren't there, from people that have watched this. It's a faster game. It's perhaps a more furious game, but we need to be really, really careful here that we don't sort of lose the importance of the scrum and the front row. It's the differentiator of our sport. Does it maybe lead to a discussion going forward about different sorts of variations and allowing people greater flexibility at local level to maybe adapt things? And the important thing at the end of the day is we've got people back on a rugby pitch. So might it lead to greater flexibility? If people want that, I would suggest that's probably a positive thing. But there's no desire here. We haven't created COVID to create law changes, which I think sometimes a few people think we're trying to force things in through the back door. That's absolutely not the case.
No, definitely not. But it'd be nice to scrummage again at some point soon. That's for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Can't be doing any more of this running stuff.
Yeah.
Let's have a scrum. Let's have a ruck or more. I think. God, never been so fit in my life. Thanks. Steve, did you hear that question?
No, you froze again there, but I can see. Is it the one you've got up there, Sean? The thoughts on travel from level 3?
What thoughts on? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm presuming that what we're thinking here is the tiers, the tier 1, 2, 3, and the risk levels. I mean, I think the important thing here is that people just have to follow local guidance. It's becoming more and more difficult to keep on top of this. Clearly, government are putting areas into lockdown, and then the local authorities and the mayors in those areas are able to impose restrictions on top of that. So I think the important thing is people locally sort of getting a handle on that. At the moment, there are no, as far as we're aware, there are no bans on travel into different areas. They're travel is advised not to take place from one area to another. So I think at the moment the advice is, people shouldn't travel into Greater Manchester unless it's absolutely essential, for example. And I think it's part of our responsibility as a rugby community to try and abide by that wherever we possibly can. And hence, I think the need to think about localising competition and localising training. But clearly, we have situations, don't we, where players may well live in one area, work in another area, and play their rugby in another area. So I think people have just got to use real common sense at local level here.
Definitely. And are we hoping that we'll get some sort of local, whether it's a league or whatever, once rugby commences, is it going to be a more localized for the next few months, or are we planning just going back straight in what it was?
No, I mean, again, like we talked about, I think last time we were on with you, and again, be interested in people's views on that. We've seen a pretty significant shift over the last 4 or 5 weeks from we've got to be full league rugby, full contact rugby. That's all we're going to play, to just get us playing rugby in some way, shape or form. Lots of discussions been going on over the last few days. I think over the weekend and into next week, we'll be in a much clearer position about what does this mean for the league structure. Are we better off just introducing something where promotion and relegation's gone for this year, and we're just in a position where clubs are encouraged and supported and to play more local games. There'll be some that want that in a structured environment, and there are some that probably won't.
Sorry, my connection is having a mare tonight.
Okay, hopefully I'm okay and everybody's picking up what I'm saying. I think the essence is, play local wherever possible. I don't know if it looks like we may have lost Sean here. I don't know.
Sorry.
Back?
Sorry.
Yeah, no.
The mayor this evening. Oh, anyway, right. Where did we get to? Sorry. So this is from Natalie, following on from the question about women and women's.
Yeah, I think you might have just jumped one. You might have just jumped one, Sean.
Well, oh yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
That'd be handy. That'd be handy, wouldn't it? Sorry. What a mess. Will we see more investment in the women's game?
I think you might have jumped one. I don't think we got to Heather's there about the future of women's grassroots rugby. So I think they followed on, didn't they? What
is the future of the women's grassroots rugby in regards to financial backing to keep these teams alive at this uncertain time? How will games happen if we have teams in tier 2 and 3 area?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the tiered area is more challenging in the women's game, arguably, because we've not got as many teams. They're more spread out, so localizing things proves a little bit more challenging, and particularly the sort of variations in level. I think we're just going to have to work through that in a transition season. I think it's absolutely crucial that we put a real focus on keeping the women's game alive. If that means more teams playing each other 3 or 4 times throughout this season at local level, and just getting those games played and keeping those players engaged, it's crucial. The work and effort that's gone in at local level, volunteers and players and clubs over the last few seasons to grow the women's game. One of the greatest fears, I think, is that sort of falls off the cliff quite quickly. I think in terms of the financial backing situation, what's encouraging is that in conversations with clubs that we have now, more and more of them see the women's, I'm not going to call it a section, but the women's teams a much more integral part of the club. And I think that's what we've got to keep driving home. This is not a women's section in a men's club. It's a rugby club in which the men's game and the women's game is played. And one of our main objectives going forward is to support clubs to support themselves, to be more sustainable and less sort of reliant on maybe other people. And I would have a very, very strong argument here that a club that doesn't invest in the women's game and that doesn't support and engage in the women's game is not going to be a self-reliant and sustainable club in 10 years' time. So I think the importance of the women's game inside the club, and hence I think we've got to look at the club that rugby is being played in to make sure that they invest and they back and they support the continuation of that team. You know, we want to desperately try and break away from this men's section, women's section to a rugby club in which men's and women's rugby is played.
So a one club philosophy.
It's crucial, isn't it? I mean, it's
within a team.
And I have to say, and it might be, you know, some may regard it as a bit controversial, but I actually think that that's what people expect nowadays. It may not be what our players 20 or 30 years ago expected, but I think particularly as we do some work with teenagers and, you know, why they're dropping out the sport or why they want to stay in the sport, there's just an expectation nowadays that this is going to be a dual gender sport. It's not going to be a sort of a male environment or a female environment or a male and female environment. It's going to be a rugby environment and everybody's in it together. So I think this is a key to retaining the sort of teens and 20s and 30s generation. And it's also key in terms of recruiting new players in. I think we might have talked on the last one of these about some of the clubs who've started to perhaps run Friday night under lights activity in pre-COVID conditions, where they've maybe run their under 18 boys and under 18 girls back to back on a Friday night, and they've seen, you know, huge numbers coming through the door. So let's use this as an opportunity to really unite the club.
Definitely. Sort of on that going forward then, Bethany says, with you mentioning playing more locally, some women's teams don't have that option since their leagues are in multiple districts. How would you say that works?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was just saying, Bethany, really. I think it's inevitably more challenging because if we think about the number of male teams across the whole country is probably fourfold what the number of women's teams is. That means that the geography just isn't going to work to quite the same degree. It might mean that travel distance is slightly larger, but we've still got to try and keep this as local as we can. You know, local might mean 40, 50 miles rather than, you know, 10, 15, 20 miles. It might mean a lot more than that in some parts of the country, but reducing it as much as we possibly can. I mean, we can't create new teams out the ether and we can't put teams where they're not. But keeping it as local as we can. Maybe, as I say, accepting that we might have to play the same team on more occasions than we would normally do, but at least we're getting games and we're getting rugby played. But again, if anyone's got any bright ideas on that, hey, we haven't got all the solutions here. So bright ideas always welcome.
This might sound a bit sort of controversial, but is there a feeling or that might lead you to think that women's rugby might get saturated if there were more and more local teams? There'd be too many clubs for the amount of players coming into the game.
I don't think. I mean, the aspiration has to be, doesn't it, that over
of course, yeah,
a period of time, whatever that is, that every club has a has their female team. It's just
100%.
it's how quickly you can do that. We've seen huge interest over the last couple of years, particularly in the teenage years. What we've got to really do is make sure that we don't make the same mistakes that we've made in the men's game. And that's the danger. We fall back into, we need a league structure. Well, I don't know. I mean, league structures, promotion, relegation, everybody aspiring to climb when not everybody wants to do that. Maybe that there's always a challenge of going from single age group rugby to open age rugby. And I know there's, at the moment in the women's game, we're talking about 2-year age bands at under 15 and 3-year age bands at under 18. And absolutely, ultimately, you want year-on-year age bands, but then you create the same problem that you've got in the men's game, which is we play with the same age group for 7 years, and then all of a sudden we go into open age rugby. So I think we need to have a real look at this, a bit of a reset button on all of this. And it must be our aspiration that every club has a women's team, but that's not going to happen right now. It's probably not going to happen in 3 years. It may not happen in 5 years. But at some point in the next decade, surely that should be our aspiration. And the growth over the last decade, if that can be replicated again, then the potential is absolutely there to do it.
Well, yeah, let's hope so. Let's hope so. It's been brilliant in the last, especially with the inner warrior camps and everything that goes around that. Let's hope that we can continue building that, and we get to that goal in 5 years and 10 years beyond. Okay, so we've got Circle Full Cuthbert. Great name. Do you envision the current 2021 season being scrapped completely, or will there be some shortened league playing only one fixture against each team, or do you see it being something else? I think we've sort of answered that one.
Yeah,
we answered that one at the top, really, didn't we? By saying we hope not.
I mean, I think what you have to look at here is the whole competition integrity thing, and how long you can make this last. I mean, 18-19 was a normal season. 19-20 was a curtailed season. So if you have another sort of curtailed, aborted, shortened season in 2021, what does that start to do for competition integrity? There's so much unknown at the moment around.
I don't think it's just competition integrity, though, is it? I don't think it's even just competition integrity. It's players and players not wanting to play and not having an opportunity to play, and clubs not having the opportunity to put on games, which sort of goes hand in hand. And that's when we might see even more players dropping out of the game, and even more clubs dropping out of entirely.
I think maybe the thing, and I mean, Sean, you've done great work in this area already through Fill Your Boots. The issue is if you've got in a challenging season, which we're going to have, if we've still got a league system with promotion and relegation, the pressure and the need to get 15 plus players out is really challenging. And then we're going to get fixtures cancelled. We're going to get fixtures canned. Whereas if we could get back to, in what is an unprecedented season, the principle of that we've been trying to push around game on, just get the game played. If I'm going to come and play you next week, and actually there's not a huge amount at stake, but we just want to get our players played, and you've got 13 and I've got 12, why wouldn't we just turn up and get the game played? Because that's still 25 players that have had a game of rugby.
100%. Absolutely, 100%. Let's been calling for things like this. They have it in the Welsh sort of second and third team leagues where you just play, just whatever you've got, just play. And I think actually 10-a-side ready for rugby at the moment is a good way of getting 10 people, 20 people out every week, whereas you might not be able to, or you haven't been able to for 6 months or so. Cool. What we've got. If you want to ask questions, please just put them in the comments. We will get to them. We will get to them all. We'll get to as many as we can. Have I got a question? Yeah, I guess I should do. I should have wrote those down. So there were some tweaks to the rugby rules a few weeks ago. What brought that on? Was it just feedback and sort of focus groups, I guess, about the rule tweaks?
Which ones? The
Ready for Rugby rule tweaks. It came out about 3 weeks ago or so.
Yeah, I mean, just yeah, feedback. I mean, that's you can obviously in developing Ready for Rugby, we bizarrely we actually had to get New Zealand to play it for us because we weren't allowed to get that number of people on a pitch playing here. So you inevitably you think you've got it right. Normally, if you're doing that sort of stuff, you'd be able to do it week in, week out for 3 or 4 weeks with the same group of players, and you'd perfect it and you'd video it and you'd analyze it and you'd work through what needed to happen. This was done so quickly that clearly you get a bit of video footage back and you adapt it on the back of that. But actually, you need to get people playing, and the feedback loop's really important here, both from players and from referees, because if we're gonna play this game and we're gonna keep referees active, and that's it's another key piece that people talk about not wanting Ready for Rugby matches, but actually think about when we get back to full contact rugby, if half of our referees have found something better to do at the weekend, then we're going to be in trouble, aren't we? So actually getting them engaged and getting them involved, and they inevitably see things that you don't always think about. So hopefully it's agile, it's flexible, and we just keep it going.
If this England Barbarians game can't go ahead because 2 people allegedly went out on the piss, could we have?
Oh, we lost you at the vital moment there. We lost you at the vital moment.
I was just saying, could if England and the Barbarians play an international game of Ready for Rugby, if the Barbarians can't find 13 new players because they all went out on the piss, allegedly?
I mean, I don't think you'd see them playing Ready for Rugby, would you? I mean, the essence of that, the essence of this game this weekend is the reason for it is a performance-driven game. It was intended to be a preparation game for England before they go into the last game of the Six Nations next weekend against Italy. So he is hoping that some players can be found.
Yeah. If the Barbarians need some help, that's what we're here for.
Fill your boots.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Adam Gillings on Twitter. How is the Kids First program ceasing? He can't see it on the new RFU structure. It would be a real shame, as it's made a massive difference.
Yeah, no, it's not ceasing at all. I mean, we had previously in the structure, we had a person managing and developing that program, Adam, and he's done Adam's got a great new job in the new structure. He's going to be looking after the CBs, the constituent bodies in a quarter of the country. He's done a brilliant job, and it's testament to him really that it's so integrated and embedded now in the work that we do. We will have a team of 24 coach educators as part of the new structure who are out in the game, running coach education, developing CPD, running coach education, and an integral part of what they will do is the Kids First training and coaching. So, you reach a point where something gets integrated and embedded that well in a structure where you don't think you need to sort of call it out and have somebody managing it. It gets rooted in the system, and we think that's where Kids First is now.
Definitely, I think it's been great. Lots of clubs using it. I went along to the conference a couple of years back, and it was absolutely superb and so enthusiastic to see everyone getting involved. And yeah, it was great. So long way to continue. Natalie,
Absolutely.
have you had any feedback about the pitch up and play? I'm not sure what she means there.
Yeah,
it's been
maybe.
successful for our club, and do the RFU see it as a way forward for recruitment across all rugby teams and ages?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the specifics of what we're saying, but if we're basically talking about, some of the bigger clubs who maybe move towards a system where you're not necessarily having to be in a team midweek that trains, that plays a fixture against another team on a Saturday, but 30, 40, 50 players rock up, depending how many players we've got. We decide whether we're going to play sevens, ready for rugby, 15s. We get a couple of teams together and away we go. We mix the teams up, we bring new players in. And I think particularly in the women's game, in a Warrior and things, this has really helped, because it sometimes the fear of new players is actually going and having to play against other teams that want they're quite happy to rock up. I mean, I suppose it's the five-a-side soccer model of 10, 15 years ago. You turn up, you put in a team, you play a game, you go home. And I think this is the innovation that we're looking for, really, in clubs. We've got to take some stuff from other sports. I mean, look at how successful things like Park Run have been.
Absolutely,
how do how do we create the Park Run of rugby in a club where people can just rock up at a certain time every week? They know they're going to get a rugby ball in their hands. It's the same venue. It's often the same group of people. You don't see one Park Run going and competing against another Park Run, but you get hundreds of thousands of people each week that turn up and do it. So I think the more innovation like that we've got, the better. It's how people want to consume their sport now.
100%. Lee Goddell, with regards to coach education, I work on an as and when basis as a coach developer for the RFU. Is this opportunity going to be there for me to deliver courses on behalf of the RFU?
Yeah, Lee. I mean, we're still gonna need coach educators. It's delivering coach education, that I've just said, is a key part of the coach developer role, but we've only got 24 of them. And they're, England's it's not a huge country, but it's still a big country. So we're still gonna need people out and about. And I mean, the development of coaches, it's going to be even more critical. A bit like I said earlier about referees. The fear is that the more that rugby isn't played, the more people will, not just players, but also coaches and referees, will go away and find other things to do. I think the other thing about coach development is it's not going to be there's not going to be as much sort of face-to-face as maybe we've always seen in the past. Virtual stuff, mentoring people, sessions like this with groups of coaches, I think are going to become more and more part of the norm.
Definitely. I want to do my coaching badges and stuff as soon as I can. So I'll be looking forward to more Zoom calls with you, Lee.
And the positive thing is we're going to we just announced on Tuesday actually the plan to start to reboot some of the coach education courses. Clearly, it's stuff that we can only do stuff that can only take place outside, and there's going to be all sorts of restrictions. It's going to look and feel different, but it's great that we're managing to get it going again and getting it rebooted in some way, shape or form.
And people can find that information on englandrugby.com. Is that
correct? Right? Yeah.
Cool. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. So I think we're going to pause there and we'll come back for round 3 whenever you want, Steve. I really appreciate it. Sorry for the issues that we've had sort of during, but thank you for all your questions. Thank you to Steve for taking time out of his evening to come and chat to us and come and answer all your questions and stuff there. We'd love to do it again one day, and we'll keep talking, and we'll keep getting information out to you guys as and when it comes out. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, everyone, for watching.
No problem. No problem, Sean. Thanks for having us again. Happy to do it anytime. And anybody out there, you know how to get hold of us.